From having an impressive 12-fight win streak to being backed by all the top coaches and players in UFC, Islam Makhachev is rising high. And trust me when I say this, he deserves it. After all, he really struggled to get where he is now. He's been a big name in the lightweight division ever since Khabib Nurmagomedov became famous, and he's finally getting the credit he deserves. The 31-year-old has been on a roll in his division and has looked almost unbeatable. Even though he lost his first UFC fight and was knocked out in his second one, he's now the king of the lightweight division and has beaten people like Arman Tsarukyan, Drew Dober, Dan Hooker, and Charles Oliveira. He also beat Alexander Volkanovski in his latest fight, but given how phenomenal the performance was from both sides, his quest to become the pound-for-pound king is still ongoing. In the always-changing world of mixed martial arts, you have to be the best to stay ahead of the curve. Just look at his fight with Gleison Tibau back in 2018.
First fight of the night, ladies and gentlemen, Islam Makhachev and Gleison Tibau.
He got the biggest knockout of his pro career in less than a minute. The superfighter threw a huge left hook over the top, which hit Tibau right in the jaw. The blow knocked out the experienced fighter, ending the fight pretty quickly. It was a great win that showed Makhachev isn't just a dangerous grappler, but also a dangerous attacker. So now it makes sense why other fighters are super scared of him too, which is just awesome. I mean, even their coaches are terrified. Javier Mendez, who used to be Nurmagomedov's trainer.
Well-roundedness means that he can do everything. Islam Makhachev, in my opinion, okay, can do more than any lightweight I've ever seen. He's good on the ground.
Recently, it was said that Makhachev had beaten the former champion in sparring more than once. The coach said that Islam's the best lightweight fighter in the UFC and just might be the best athlete of all time. He's a well-rounded athlete and the only one to beat the Eagle. This is coming from someone who's trained a legend in the sport, so yeah, it's a big compliment. And again, it's not like he doesn't deserve it. Just look back at one of his recent fights, like his very short fight against Charles Oliveira.
Olha, você já foi lutador, você sabe como que é. Tem dia que a gente tá aqui e não é o nosso melhor dia. Olha só, eu prometo pra todo mundo, eu vou buscar ele de volta.
It was the headline event of UFC 280 and people called it the ultimate test for Islam. Well, to be honest, it was a high-stakes fight for both of them. Even though Oliveira has won against some big names in the past, he was still a big underdog in this fight. And let's not forget how Makhachev was on a 10-fight streak at that point. Fans were worried for him, and not because he lacked the skill, but because he's never fought someone who was ranked in the top 5 in his weight class. Also, the lightweight championship was on the line. It's safe to say that he made history by defeating Oliveira that day. He was even awarded the Submission of the Year. So mix that in with the lightweight belt, there's no doubt that he's amazing. He was ranked number 1 pound for pound, especially since he had pinned one of the most dangerous grapplers in the sport. When he finally got his arms around Oliveira, he was pretty sure Dubronx would tap. In the press tours leading up to that, he told anyone who would listen that he would finish Oliveira. Before this title fight, fans thought that Brazilian was invincible, especially because he was 11-0 and had just won matches against Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier, and Justin Gaethje. But in turn of events, Islam totally dominated their fight. He knocked Charles down with better punches and then choked him out with an arm triangle. This ended Oliveira's reign. He showed the same skill when he fought Keon Johnson back in 2018. After going around each other on their feet for most of the first round, the Dagestani grabbed Johnson's legs and pulled him to the ground. Then he kept strengthening his position and throwing blows at Johnson until he was able to isolate one of Johnson's arms and put him in an armbar. This particular win just showed how easy it is for him to dominate when the fight moves to the ground, and he proved his point once again when he took on a featherweight champion. Yep, I'm talking about his fight with Alexander Volkanovski. The UFC 284 took place in Perth, Australia.
Maybe I could have capitalized in some positions a bit more. Hey, what do you do? Congrats to Islam.
There we saw one of the best fights ever. The main event was a fight between featherweight champ Volkanovski and Makhachev. The rowdy Australian crowd made the whole night very exciting, and Volk put up a great fight. Those 25 minutes showed off the skills, determination, and heart of both of the champions, but he lost by unanimous decision. This just proved to the few haters the Dagestani has that he's the best. Volkanovski fought well and tried to bring the fight to an end, and the most impressive feat was how he mostly stopped Makhachev's famous grappling, but Islam put up one heck of a fight. In the first and second rounds, Islam dominated by repeatedly hitting his opponent. Still, Volk felt confident enough in the third round to try multiple takedowns on the bigger fighter. The Australian fighter tried to keep his home crowd happy, but he couldn't since Islam took him down and stayed in charge from there to the end. Both fighters are eager for a rematch, but that still doesn't take away from the fact that Makhachev won yet another fight, and such a high-profile one at that. Although, if you think about it, all his wins make sense, right? After all, his skill set is inspirational. Even though the 31-year-old wasn't a big betting favorite against Volkanovski, since people thought that the featherweight champion would be outstruck, he still proved everyone wrong. As the fight went on, he showed everyone that he couldn't only keep up with the amazing fighter on his feet, but could also win a match with his fists. There's no doubt that he's much taller than his opponent, but we know that Volkanovski has already beaten taller opponents like Max Holloway. The new champ won because he avoided the featherweight champ's feints and landed short, quick punches of his own, hitting the fighter multiple times, depriving him of his chance of double champ status. I mean, he even punished Drew Dober. Don't get me wrong, Dober is a great fighter, but during UFC 259, Islam completely destroyed him. It was surprising to see Makhachev beat him so badly for 2 rounds and a half. Of course, the Dagestani came out as the winner. He's an awesome wrestler, and his striking game is clearly getting better. Plus, he literally has the entire UFC standing behind him. Even Daniel Cormier can't help but gush over him. The former 2-division champion is a huge fan of the Russian. He said that Islam is the best fighter in the world at his weight. While he gave an interview to MMA Fighting, he was literally fangirling over him. DC also praised his skills as a wrestler, saying that Makhachev is so sure of himself that he would fight Olympic gold medalist Jordan Burroughs. He isn't the only one who's super impressed. Many people in the MMA world think that Islam is the next big thing. So what does the UFC have in store for him next? While there hasn't been any official news on the lightweight champion's next fight, we can't help but speculate about who he'll fight against next. Fans and commentators do have a list of fighters who he should fight, including Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, or Charles Oliveira again. Any of these fighters would be awesome opponents. But with the way Islam has been rising up the ranks, I don't think they would stand much of a chance against him. After all, he's proven time and time again that he's the best, and that's all I have on the unbeatable rise of Islam Makhachev.